Hello everyone and welcome back to another Python video. In this video we're going to be talking about nested function calls in Python. So a nested function call is pretty simple and I have two examples here to help you understand. So it's basically just a function call inside another function call. So what you need to know is that the innermost function is what will be executed first, and it'll move out with each after each time the innermost function finishes, it will move out to the outermost one. So the returned value is what will be used for the next outer function. And I know that sounds really confusing right now, but I'll help you understand with an example. So first, let's use a normal function to help you understand. So we have a number, and let's say it will ask you to enter a positive number, and you run it, and it just asks you to enter a positive number and nothing happens. And then say we want to also change the number later. After you enter the positive number, we want to change it to a float. So float and then num. And as you can see right here, I just gotta explain this real quick. So this is a variable, and this is the input function, and this is what will ask you to enter. It will print this to ask you to enter a positive number, as you can see over here, and it will be stored in the number variable. And this is the input function, which will allow the program to accept user input, as we just did. So moving on, number will be stored as a float now, and moving on after that, number equals to abs num. So abs, if you know anything about cars or bodybuilding, it's not what you think. Abs is just the absolute value. So as you can see, return the absolute value of the argument. So whatever the number is, it will give you the positive the opposite value of it. So if I put -1, it'll store it as 1, because the positive value is the absolute value of any number. And moving on, we can also round the number, and finally we will print the number. So let's run it. Enter a positive number 5, and it'll return 5. But say if you enter A, it'll be wrong, because you cannot store an alphabet or something that's not a number inside of a float. So you run it again, 5.0, it's just 5. Why? Because it's an integer. So as you can see, it's taking up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lines of code to finish up this simple little program that we have written. And there's an easy way to combine all of them together, and it's with the nested function calls. So to do that, we print, because that's the main function right here, and you have to know that the innermost is what will execute first, and we want to execute this, which is enter a positive number. Okay, but we also want to make it a float. So you add parentheses, float, and then parentheses, and you have to add one at the end as well. And then you want to add the abs, so abs, and then here as well. And then you also want to add the round function. There we go. Okay, and there you have it. You run it. Wait, let me turn this into a comment first. You run it, and it's the same thing. Enter a positive number, 6. Okay, let's enter a negative number this time. negative 6, you still end up with 6 because it rounds up. I mean, because it takes the absolute value of it. And let's round. So enter a positive number, say 5.1, you'll get 5. Let's say 5.6, you'll get 6 because it rounds up. And that's basically what nested function calls are in Python. It's basically just taking a simple program of a couple lines and putting them all within one line. So here we have the input function. This is what we'll execute first. So sometimes the order matters, sometimes it doesn't. Like right here, it doesn't really matter because we're just, you can round first or you can take the absolute value. It doesn't matter. I mean, I guess it does matter in some situations, but in this situation right now, it doesn't really matter, right? So the order just be careful of the order because sometimes it matters. That's what I'm trying to say. So first, it's gonna accept user input, then it's gonna make it a float, it's gonna turn it into a float, and then it's gonna take the absolute value of it, and then it's gonna round it, and then it's going to print it. So thank you very much for watching and tuning in. If you learned something new or enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more Python and computer science content. I do want to mention one more thing before I end this video, and it's that you need to make sure that it is a float if you're going to be using something with a decimal, right? Like right here, we have float. If we change it to int and we try to, let's stop it and run it again. Change it to int, and if we try to put something with a decimal, we get an error. But if we change it to a float and we run it again, it's fine. So you need to be careful of that. If you're going to be using decimals, you need to use float. If not, then it's okay. You can use int or integer, int or float. And one more thing, you also need to be careful to use int or float in the beginning, because if you don't, this is considered a string. So if you run this code and you put 5, you get an error because you're trying to perform a mathematical function onto a string.